All right, Develle Morrison of Bosley Real Estate joins me now for this week's look at some of the real estate headlines. Hey, Develle.
Hey, Maggie. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Good.
So the Real Estate and Mortgage Institute of Canada has reported that 1/3 of Canadians are regretting their mortgage, and an additional 12% say they regret being locked in at a bad rate. No surprise there, right?
No surprise there at all. I mean, obviously, given that mortgage rates are where they are, there's a lot of people that are feeling the pinch, right? And there's lots of people who are on variable mortgages that are feeling the pinch. And there's lots of people who have to renew their mortgages after doing a fixed mortgage that are stressed out about what are their new mortgage payments going to look like.
Do you think habits will change, as we have seen all of this unfold, right? Again, we saw rates at 1.4 and under just a few years ago. And, now those rates are a lot higher. Will people look at real estate differently?
Yeah, I think we will. I think that this will be a learning exercise for everybody, and they'll start to rethink the fixed versus variable. People will be, I think, more inclined to lock into fixed rates now after going through a period like this. I think the next time, we see lower mortgage rates, people are going to jump all over that to make sure that they have fixed rate mortgages. But yeah, I do think this is going to be a learning lesson for all of us. But, I think back to, I feel like we actually don't have enough financial education in this country around personal finances. How many times do we say we're not teaching this in school? And we should be, and we should be educating ourselves, and we should have continual education about, mortgage debt, credit card debt. I feel like we actually just don't know enough, and hence the stress that so many people are facing right now.
You use the word stress, and I was going to ask about the stress test because, there are some who have some issues with that. But I mean, that has been built into the system, at least for first-time home buyers, to really help with that. Do you think there maybe needs to be a stress test across the board for anyone who's buying a home, be it first time, second time, fifth time?
Actually, there is. That stress test
exists.
Yeah, that stress test exists for everybody.
I didn't know that. I always thought it was for first-time homebuyers. That's good to know.
No, it's for everybody. I mean, the reason why they set it up was because they wanted to make sure that if the rates jumped up by 2%, that you could still afford your mortgage payments. So I feel like the stress test has done its job. It's time to get rid of it because you can't speak. People could be being stress tested now at 9%. Right. So I feel like it's time to remove the stress test. You've done your job. People have been tested.
You really think you think people have already been tested, but you really think removing it is going to help? I mean, I feel like, we are going to see a lot of people lose their home. We're going to see foreclosures. Yes, they would have gone through a stress test. You think it's time to get rid of it? I mean, that does kind of give people a reality check of, hey, would you be able to still afford this mortgage if if an interest rate goes up, right?
That's why I feel like the stress test has done its job because interest rates have gone up. Now, of course, we know that the next bank rate announcement is coming September the 6th, and interest rates might go up again. Chances are, if they go up, it's going to be 1/4% or perhaps 0.5%. So for me, at this point, why stress somebody out at 2% when hopefully we're never getting there?
I just think about the people who are entering into the market right now, at 6%, whatever. I think they also need a reality check because who knows, to your point, September 6th, we can see it continue to increase. We don't know how far this is going to go.
No, we don't. But I find that the people who are getting into the market now are their T's are crossed and their I's are dotted, as in order to be a first-time buyer in this market, your finances are locked down.
Okay. On that same note, 5-year variable and fixed rate mortgages have tripled since March 2022. Mortgage holders are seeing their 25-year mortgages transform into 55-year mortgages and now infinity mortgages. Tell us about this.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy to see amortizations go up that high. But I think, because I know that people get stressed out seeing amortizations of 50 years, 70 years, whatever, We also have to keep in mind that rates will go back down again at some point. So it won't always look like this. The banks are helping people out so that they can stay in their homes because banks don't want to be in the business of selling people's houses for them. They want people to just pay their mortgages. So if people are willing to pay their mortgages, that's why they're allowing these incredibly long amortizations. But we also have to think going forward, interest rates will come down at some point. Number two, those people might make lump sum payments at some point to help the amortization come down. Number three, they might earn more later on, get promotions later on, like in the years to come. So they will be okay. And also number four, they might not stay in their home for the next 20, 30, 50 years anyway. They will most likely sell in the next 10 to 15. So their amortization, although on paper that sounds scary, I feel like it's going to be all right.
But I don't know, I mean, that sounds like a lot of hypotheticals and most likely is mights because, you talk, I mean, we have Lyle Stein who comes on our show on Sundays. He's an economist and he says, and you've said this as well, that this is actually more the normal rate that we should be at, right? Like 5%, 5.5%. We're not going to see the 1.4 as an under ever again. I mean, that was a blip in history.
Well, hold on a second, right? We had
not that low.
We had the pandemic, and none of us would have ever predicted something like the pandemic.
It's true.
And I almost feel like our world is so uncertain. Anything is possible. When I look at all the fires that are happening everywhere, I know that we feel really secure. And you know what? Life was great in Toronto. We don't have the fires that everybody else pretty much around the world is seeing.
Yeah.
And we don't know what's going to come down the pipe later on that might force our governments to bring those interest rates drastically low again because there is some thing that on the horizon that we haven't seen, we don't know about, like a pandemic.
You're right. We do not know the future, even though I keep looking for that crystal ball. I have yet to find one. You're right. Things can change and we could see a 1.4 rate. But I mean, if we look at the grand scheme of things, a 5.5 is, probably is more the regular rate that we would normally see. And I get a little worried when I see an infinity mortgage. If that pops up when I have to renew my mortgage, I think I would hyperventilate. Like I'd just be like, because a part of us is thinking that we will pay off our mortgage, that we will be mortgage free. And that is now a pipe dream.
Well, again, we don't, as you said, we don't know the future. There's so many things that could happen. And that's why I feel like getting stressed out about it now when there's all of these other things that could happen down the road.
Yeah.
I think there's that saying about, sort of stressing out for things today that really in the future may never happen.
Yeah.
And so I guess that's why I feel like, I guess maybe it's a Pollyanna view. Maybe it's a rose-colored glasses view. I feel like things will get better. It's going to be okay. We don't have to stress out about this.
We always need people like you, Deval, that sees the glass as half full instead of people like me who see the glass as half empty. So Deval, Habitat for Humanity, we all know Habitat. It's, this charity that has helped millions around the world get into the housing market with homes built by volunteers and sweat equity. There's no down payment for the owner, and the mortgage is geared to their income. Well, now families earning $100,000 in Toronto are eligible for a Habitat for Humanity home as well. The CEO of Habitat Canada told the Toronto Star that it's part of what they do, quote, helping working families who live in homes that are overcrowded or unaffordable. When I read this, my jaw dropped open. Like, we are at that point where $100K is seen as, that you could be eligible for a Habitat for Humanity home.
Yeah, that is pretty crazy when you hear that stat. But, when you see that in order to qualify for, a $1.1 million home, you need to have an income over $200,000. No wonder that Habitat is essentially recognizing what an expensive city we live in and that $100,000 does qualify for Habitat. But yeah, it is crazy. But, It's interesting with Habitat because they are building generally single family dwellings.
Mm-hmm.
And, something I have always mentioned is that, there's nothing wrong with working your way up. So getting that smaller condo, moving to a bigger condo, and then moving into a house. And so at 100,000 to be getting a house, that's pretty fortunate, because most people are not getting houses at $100,000. And I don't think that there's anything wrong with, working our way up to get that house of the dreams. We don't get everything all at once. But the other thing that struck me about Habitat was they said that they're starting to do some more multi-unit housing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that is most likely the best way for them to go to help more people. I mean, this is about helping people get into homes, and homes doesn't need to be a house. It can also be a condo. So I think that, them getting more into multi-unit housing is the best thing they could do to help more people.
Yeah, I mean, I am a big advocate for Habitat for Humanity. I think they do great work. It is important for us to clarify, though, that there is some criteria. Families have to be living in unacceptable circumstances, crowded conditions. They talk in the article about, a six-person family who, 2 parents, 4 kids, and living in small quarters, where everybody's sharing a bedroom. So there have to be some other extenuating circumstances for a family to be able to apply. And again, it could be a collection, like maybe mom's making 60, dad's making 40,
Yes.
that, makes up 100K. So there are a couple of different, criteria that come into the mix. But I just think it's also a stark reality of where we're at.
Yeah.
In
Totally.
the city of Toronto right now when it comes to affordability, an issue that continues to rise up. We heard this week, talk about what do we do when it comes to revenue generation. Olivia Chow made a campaign promise that she would have to raise taxes in order to do that. I'm going to play a little bit of my conversation with Olivia Chow back in June before she was elected, when we tried to narrow down. This was the conversation. Remember, Devel, back and forth.
Yes,
will she raise taxes? Won't she? Will she? Won't she? Here's a bit of the conversation I had with Olivia Chow a couple months ago.
Yes, I would ask those that are buying luxury homes that are $3, $5, $10, $12 million, they can afford to pay a bit more. And then those speculators, land speculators that buy a home and then they evict the tenants, leave it vacant, wait for the right time to rebuild, they can afford to pay a bit more on the vacancy tax from 1% to 3%, and that would generate $44 million. So we'll add it all up and look at the inflation and what's the interest rate 9 months from now, and we'll come up with a modest tax increase. My political opponents are making stuff up. They're saying like 25%, 20%. No, they're wrong. They're making it up. Not going to do that.
So could you put a number on it, Olivia, today to clear the air? Because if, we are hearing that 25%.
I really don't know, Maggie, because I don't know what the interest rate's going to be, right? The Bank of Canada just bumped up the interest rates.
But what I am hearing, though, is that there will be an increase, though.
Yes, there would be,
Okay.
but it would be very modest. It really, the way I'm doing it is asking people that have a lot more money than most of the people, probably 98% of the people. Only those that can afford to pay a bit more will pay more.
All right, so that was a bit of my conversation with Olivia Chow back in June before she was elected as the new mayor of the city of Toronto. A new report that was released this week by the city has recommended some new revenue generating tools to get the city out of the $1.5 billion hole. A part of that is what she had talked about, this surtax on the sale of luxury homes, potentially a levy on commercial parking spots, higher fees on on-street parking. And then the city manager has talked about potentially a city tax as well. What are some of your thoughts on this, Deval?
Geez, I mean, the The increase in taxes for commercial parking, it feels very nominal to me.
Yeah.
It sounds like it's going to raise, some additional dollars. So that's not such a bad idea. The increase in the vacant home tax, when City of Toronto first put that out there, I think their estimates were clearly quite incorrect. The program does cost, if I remember correctly, but don't quote me, it does cost a few $1,000,000 to run that program. And in the end, they only found 2,100 vacant homes. So I'm not exactly sure how much money they're going to raise with 2,100 vacant homes when 96% of the residents responded to the vacant home, the thing that we had to fill out.
Right.
So I feel that's a little bit misguided. So if we talk about the, over $3 million, those people have to pay additional taxes. Okay. So right now, anyone who buys in the City of Toronto has to pay the double land transfer tax. If you purchase outside of the 416, you only have the one land transfer tax that gets paid to the provincial government. So on a $3 million house, that's $123,000 worth of the double land transfer tax. So 61,475 of that will go to Toronto, and the same amount will go to the province. So it's not like they're not paying a lot of taxes. And if you increase that amount on a house over $3 million, how much are those people going to just not move? Yeah. Because I can tell you, even right now, people who have to contemplate an upgrade move, even over 2 million, contemplate whether it's worth doing it when you're going to have to pay over $100,000 in taxes to do it. So what it does do is it restricts supply. You have less people moving and you have less transactions when taxes are so high. And, it would be great if the City of Toronto could work with some sort of economist to figure out, okay, what's going to be that correlation between charging people more money and fewer people moving? Because at the end of the day, the city is getting money from people moving. So if less people move, the city's going to get less money. So, in last year, when I looked, it looked like there were about 700 houses that were over $3 million sold in 2022. And so far for this year, around 450 houses have sold over $3 million. So I just go back to how much money is this really going to raise for the city? Is it just going to make people in that price point say, hey, we're not going to move? And so therefore the city's not going to make as much money as they think they will be.
Well, in this report, and again, it does have to be debated. And so, this is just the beginning process of this conversation. The report says that they estimate that this change with this new luxury tax would generate about $26 million a year. Definitely not the 1.5 billion that we need, a slight dent. There has been no talk of this vacant home tax, though, in this new report. So, maybe that will come up in conversation and in debate as this moves on to the executive and then to City Hall. We'll see. But the city is strapped. It needs money.
Oh, of course.
I wonder, we have to run. I wonder about a sales tax. I mean, Premier Ford's spokesperson has come out and said he has no intention on taxing more in the city. But, we're all looking under the seat cushions and looking for the loose change. And something has to happen. We'll see what happens in this conversation as, Mayor Chow moves it forward.
Right. I mean, I think they probably need to cut as well.
Yeah.
Yes, you're right. We need to figure out where we can get more revenue, but I think that we also need to trim the fat and figure out where there are cost savings. They need to sell some of their land to developers so that they can, build more housing and the city can get more money.
Thanks again, Deval. Always a treat with you.
Thanks for having me.
That was Deval Morrison, broker with Bosley Real Estate Limited and regular contributor here on Toronto This Weekend.